on HPC's Let's Wrap.
As people explore things like gratitude and kindness and compassion more deeply and see that it's the only way they're going to survive individually, therefore it's the only way we're going to survive collectively. We have to find it for ourselves and be forgiving and full of grace, full of kindness and compassion for ourselves, and then let it start to ripple.
We introduced you to Darin Hollingsworth last month in our conversation about gratitude. Today, we extend our conversation to keeping traditions alive during the holiday season with gratitude, even as challenges from COVID to loved ones with illnesses have impacted our lives. Well, joining us again is Darin Hollingsworth, and we want to thank you so much for being with us again on Let's Wrap.
I'm glad to be here.
Last month, we talked a lot about gratitude, and you are really an expert at gratitude. We really talked about the Thanksgiving season, what that can mean to us. And now we're still in that holiday season, going into, I guess, the next phase. What are some of your reflections when you look at gratitude? And we know it's so prevalent and in thinking about it around Thanksgiving, but how do we keep that going through the end of the year?
That's why I call gratitude a practice. It's because it is great to have the focal point of Thanksgiving, where lots of people really give some good energy and time and thought to it. But a sustainable gratitude experience, if you will, needs to be practiced just about daily. And it's not an effort for me and for many who do it daily. So if people will kind of use the tools that we talked about last month, and that is certainly still available to them on your YouTube channel, then I think they can go into the holidays, the rest of the holidays, with a little bit more in their toolkit to keep the thinking and the more personal experience of gratitude with them.
And I know when it comes to holidays and special occasions or things that are once a year, I know it's probably good that those times make us kind of pause.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't have them, what do you think it would be like?
Well, I think a lot of people have gotten used to giving themselves something to look forward to. And I think that is as long as it's not too future focused, I'm all about living in the present moment, right? So, but the holidays give that positive experience of something to look forward to many, many people. I think we have to be realistic that holidays can bring up anniversaries of things, of loss, of grief, of bad experiences with the holidays as children or young adults, or in blended families where people are torn in a lot of directions. So the mindful part of the holidays season to me is to be present with people wherever they are. And doing that gives a lot of grace and a lot of compassion. And as I say with gratitude, you start with yourself. You got to be grateful for you and who you are. And you've got to find your place of gratitude in the moment, even if the holidays have been difficult for you in the past. What can you do to lift yourself a little bit to get through a very busy season? Let's just face it, it's a hectic and busy season the way we've crafted it in our lives these days. But it's also a very festive season, and you can find plenty to make you smile, to make you reflective. So I think there's lots of options. It's hard for me to get back to what it would be like without it, because we have it. And I'm so grateful that we do, in my experience.
Right. And you talk about holidays being something we look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a lot of, I guess, discussion about delayed gratification. Is a holiday delayed gratification? Does it teach us to to look forward to those moments, but also be patient in the wait.
I think that's a great way to look at it, particularly for children, who that anticipation is. I can remember some of that, and I'm an old guy, but that sense of anticipation, but patiently waiting and not missing out on what's right in front of you in anticipation of the next holiday, to enjoy Christmas cookies before you get your Christmas presents. That sounds simple, but take a moment to enjoy maybe it's an ice skating experience or a field trip type thing to a zoo that has a lights event or something. The holiday season offers lots of opportunities for visual stimulation and everything. So enjoying them as they come up rather than putting too much emphasis on one particular aspect of the day, I think is meaningful.
I think that's great. And I can think of an example in our family, my own mother, um, from the time we were young. A lot of families, the opening of gifts is just a tornado or a hurricane of 15 minutes, and then it's over. And my mom and dad, but mostly my mom, didn't really like that, and so we go around and open gifts one at a time. And as the family has gotten bigger, it takes longer and longer. And for the kids, especially when they were younger, they didn't like that, but it has taught us all to wait. And I especially think when you're younger, the excitement of opening gifts is even more so. And so there's a teaching moment there, I guess, as well as pleasing my mom and letting her enjoy enjoy the opening of gifts for a longer time.
This is one of the fun things about the holidays, isn't it? The memories, and you've prompted one in me that my family ultimately got to that point. It was one at a time. As the youngest, I generally got to be, and I think they did this to decoy me a little bit. I got to be the one to pass out
Yes.
the presents,
Keep you distracted.
and we had a hard, fast rule that the wrapping paper that was going to be trash was out of the way before the next present was open,
Oh, wow.
not just for cleanup, because apparently there was one year that in that shuffle or tornado, as you mentioned, something got lost. And so it became this methodical. We had a big green trash bag. And then I had, of course, my mom and even others. Oh, that's a pretty bow. We want to save that one. So there was a pile of bows, and then there was the pile of trash, but no gift could be opened until the paper and bow from the previous gift were settled. So you made me remember that. And isn't that a fun part about the holidays, right? That
Yes.
the memories that we do have, even though they're small or somewhat insignificant, they bring a smile to my face for sure.
Right. And every family has their traditions and the way they go about things. And I think they evolve too as families evolve and you learn things just as that one situation of losing something one year, I guess in a way started a new tradition or a process, if that's what you want to call it.
And my parents were good about making that somewhat playful rather than you know, being militant about picking up the trash. It was just like, let's just make sure we get everything collected. And reminds me of another thing of just, and my dad was on disability when I was a kid. So our traditions were somewhat limited, but whatever we got, we also enjoyed like putting back under the tree as a display, like the whole family. And that was a point in hindsight, I really believe it was our parents helping us savor what we had just opened. And savoring is a wonderful practice.
Absolutely. We bring up the idea of traditions. I know we're talking about Christmas specifically. We also want to remember Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. There are lots of celebrations going on between now and the end of the year. When we're talking about traditions and
Mhm.
keeping them alive, what kind of challenges can there be for families who are enduring a child with an illness, even maybe an adult with an illness? And there's going to be additional challenges and things that those families face, particularly in the HPC family.
I hear that and I understand that completely. And Again, I relate it to some of my own experiences. My dad had chronic heart disease, and so our Christmases were not always. There was an occasion or two where he had to be in the hospital up to Christmas, but they'd get him out right after. So I can only imagine for the little ones and the parents who are trying to also accommodate other children in the home and just figure out routine and schedule and what is safe for the children. We've come through and are still navigating these unprecedented times of pandemic, and for children with other health issues, we've still got to be very mindful of those. So I think families, and again, I start with the individual parents, being full of grace for themselves, teaching children to be forgiving of themselves, because I know that there can be, for children of a certain age, a feeling of a big burden of disrupting the family. They get to a certain age and they realize that their siblings are having to kind of deal with this. So I think bringing grace and gratitude back into the equation that says, this may not be what your classmates' holiday season looks like, because we have to adjust and be the family that we're given. And again, it's back to that present moment mindedness. Where we can be together, we will, and then we will adjust. And I I think kids are more resilient to it than
Mm-hmm.
adults are, truth be told. So,
Yes.
looking to the children this time of year, that both the innocence and the peacefulness that seems to come to children really quickly. There can be a frenzy, and then they can be centered again quickly in many, many cases.
I think we can definitely learn a lot from them.
Absolutely.
We know that many families have faced additional challenges the last year or two because of COVID. In your experiences and in your work, what does this holiday look like this year for families? Because we still are dealing with some COVID challenges, and we've learned a lot, I think, from it.
Right. I think I don't have all of the medical knowledge that all of our HPC colleagues would, but there's just still got to be a lot of caution based on people's personal experiences, and keeping those children at the utmost safest. So I don't think there will be, it's just not everyday headlines like it was this time last year,
Right.
particularly this time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or Thanksgiving and the other holidays, um, where we were already seeing a spike last year. Thankfully, we've seen different variables, but less um, panic than is the way it felt for me last year. And kids pick up on that, so I'm sure that there were kids feeling some of that from their parents and not being able to visit people. That hopefully this year they're a little bit more able to have a new normal visit schedule. We can hope.
Hopefully. So I think I've seen several posts on social media with people still seeing relatives for the first time in a year or two. So I would imagine this Christmas could be the first time a lot of families have gotten together in at least a year and a half, maybe even longer.
As I think about that, you're right, particularly for people who have dealt with illnesses either on the younger part of the spectrum for children or the older. That facilities around various regions have various levels of openness to outside guests. So we will hope that families can gather in the way that's safest and most comfortable to them, um, and create some new traditions. I think that could be fun. When you're just forced to, you can create something new for yourself around whichever holiday you celebrate. That's how holidays and traditions get started. Is people decide they don't want to travel on years that aren't travel frantic, or even for events. Some people celebrate birthdays differently, and celebrate if you've got a December birthday. No matter which holiday you celebrate, it can get overshadowed by the holiday. So I know a lot of people who celebrate, if they have a December birthday, they celebrate it like 6 months opposite, June or July, and just make things up and have fun.
We heard a lot during the pandemic of people maybe repositioning their priorities or recognizing what's truly important. Do you think that could have a role in the way families plan their holiday, even maybe even the adoption of new traditions as a result of this time we've had to reflect?
I think so. I think our conversations previously about gratitude and conversations in general about time with one another. Sometimes over the last year and a half, those have been challenging times with, because two parents at home that used to go to work and three children at home that used to go to school, it has had to look different. Therefore, in that way, I'm guessing the resilience that we talked about before of being able to adapt has come into our capability in a way that we might not have thought it could have. And I think then, by being intentional about that, we you get the chance to kind of guide your family from total disruption and getting derailed through the disruption, right? And then you work through it together in a way that, if it were easier to get out and about, people could not escape the home or whatever. So maybe
Right.
we picked that up during that time together. And we built bonds across different media, right?
Right.
The way that we can converse now, the way parents have had to have meetings, kids have had to have school in many places, just changed our use of communications tools. And who knew, 5 years ago, that we would be able to do what we can do now with the consumer accessibility to the ways we communicate.
And some of these learnings and perspectives, do you think they're short term, or are we changed as a society really forever as a result of what we've been through the last couple of years?
I would say there's going to be a generational shift, either in the memory of these several holiday seasons.
Hmm.
Um, some places in the world were certainly dealing with this in December of 19.
Right.
And then it came to the US February, March. So we went through 20 and now 21. And yeah, I think it's going to create a whole different socialization for people. And in most, I would say my most optimistic terms, I think that people are learning to consider other people's feelings again. I'm seeing a little bit more of a glimmer of that okay, you do you, and I accept that with compassion and kindness. It's not with attitude and judgment.
Right.
There is the opportunity to say, okay, I get it. You're still nervous about being out. You may have a senior parent to go home to, or you may have children who have compromised health to go home to. I need to let you be in your comfort zone. And it is certainly, as people explore things like gratitude and kindness and compassion more deeply, and see that it's the only way they're going to survive individually, therefore it's the only way we're going to survive collectively. We have to find it for ourselves and be forgiving and full of grace, full of kindness and compassion for ourselves, and then let it start to ripple.
And I think that the holidays, remind us of that, even though we know we should be thinking about that all of the time. But the holidays have a way of particularly reminding us of those things that are the most important.
I think we talked about this a little bit in terms of the collective energy around a season of giving or a season of celebration of lights in the case of Hanukkah, or when so much energy is shifted, and I don't mean like even activity, but just thoughtfulness is shifted to giving and receiving. Giving and receiving involves such a wonderful exchange. We talked about previously, thanks is a giving and receiving in and of itself. So when there's a heightened awareness of that through all of these holiday traditions, and then you add the new year to it, and we'll talk about that another time, but the anticipation of something new, or being able to start, I like to start each new day with a happy new day. That's a Darinism kind of, but I also like to think about the new year as a collective place to start or renew. Start or renew. Start new, renew. Either way, you can just use it as a reset point.
And I was just thinking about the hustle we hear of the holidays. For some, maybe they even consider it a hassle.
Yeah. Interesting change of one vowel.
Yes. And I'm wondering if some will embrace maybe the return of that, or somewhat the return of that, or change some of the planning because they look back and say, "Oh, that wasn't that nice when we when we didn't have all that."
We didn't have to do all of that, right? For me, I have to say, my dad started the tradition with my brothers and I that we would go out on Christmas Eve and get something in the midst of that hustle. Um, and that was never a hassle. So there was a little bit of relief last year when I just wasn't doing that at that point last year. Um, but yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, to think, okay, you get to make the choice really whether you want to make it a hustle bustle or a hassle, or neither. Just stay in a zone that removes you from the frenetic part of it anyway.
Yes, yes. And I've only had one experience sort of looking ahead to even thinking about the shopping season. I ventured out to one of the largest malls in Houston a week ago, and it was just a weeknight after work, and I was shocked at the crowd.
Mm.
So I don't know. That's just my little one little experience, but I don't know if that's a sign of people are ready to go out. A lot of people who feel comfortable and go back to those things, and actually a little strange just watching people and not having experienced that in some time. I thought this is weird being back in this situation, but I felt a little bit of energy, and maybe I was just more conscious of it because I hadn't experienced uh, shopping like that in a while. But I was like, I think there's a heightened sense of energy here.
I love your awareness there. I think that is what we're kind of getting around to. It's being aware, being present with what's around you. Um, Not fear, I'm not, but being more aware. Okay, well, I am glad that there's a collective energy of people being out that are comfortable. And if I'm not, I'm going to take care of keeping myself comfortable and safe and still not feel afraid, right?
Right.
There are so many good observations about fear being so limiting and not a useful tool. Caution, informed caution, yeah, right.
Yes.
That lets us go out and do our thing, and then be in as much of that energy as we are comfortable being in, and contribute to it when we can. A smile across a room can make a huge difference for someone. particularly a weary retail employee, right? I mean, this time of year, so many of my friends who work in retail, boy, they will have it because of shipping and everything that um, has been difficult, and um, people getting things shipped places, all those things. Retail folks, we need to extend some additional grace to, for sure. Travel
Yes.
professionals the same way.
And I think almost every place from big city to a small town is short staffed right now. And giving them just that grace, I think, is very important because most of them they're doing the best they can, and it's just a challenging time.
So many of the people that we encounter in our daily business really have a limited impact on the world that they're in, right? So if they offer you kindness or appreciation, that's about what they can do. They can't help that the jeans weren't delivered or the toy wasn't delivered, or for that matter, in my market, we've had trouble finding turkeys to give out to people in need because there was a shortage. But that's nobody's fault. We
Right.
just have to figure out what else to do to give people some good holiday, thoughtful nutrition and do it a different way. We get to do it differently, and different is certainly not bad. Hopefully, if we want to go back to some way we did it before, we can. It'll teach us. You know me, you've talked with me enough in the last conversation, and we find what to be grateful for, right? When we
Yes.
don't have it or when it changes. So I think that opens up a wide window of opportunity to let people look at things differently.
You mentioned just a kind gesture to someone who's a total stranger. I know right now, in a lot of places, we still have the masks, and you could speak to someone through there. Any tips or ideas, suggestions on how to kind of convey kindness and some of those things when our nonverbal communication isn't as visible?
Yeah, I think that I have watched people develop an ability to speak with their eyes, partially because of Zoom, and we're just so like close to each other in terms of like the size of our heads and that kind of thing. You see more detail about people's faces when you're on a Zoom meeting or a FaceTime or otherwise. So when you're out and about, I think some of the things I do and I've watched other people do is smile with your eyes for sure, let out a chuckle. If previously you might have smiled at something and kind of hidden your giggle, let it be heard. Laughter. How many of those videos have we all seen of a baby just giggling? We don't know what they're giggling about, but it makes us giggle, right? So if we have a little giggle in our heart, and this time of year, hopefully more of us will, giggle and let it be heard. I think there's ways to, certainly among more well acquainted people, when people see people having a good time together, generally, I think there's joy there to be shared, a ripple of joy. And even if that's a wave from across the room or across the airport, when you might have been more, quiet or demure in your greeting someone, but now if we're in places that still, or in a place ourselves that we still want to mask in certain situations, we just learn ways to communicate bigger, maybe. A friend of mine who's a student in college in an acting program. Because of all of this, a professor of theirs had them basically put on like a Zorro bandana. So we're talking really only the eyes showing, literally, and maybe not even the eyebrows, and they had to be masked because it was back at a time in their semester, I guess maybe last spring. So they had to learn literally to speak with their eyes. And I'm enough of a theater geek that it just fascinated me. So I think there's lots of ways we can communicate and share a gesture of kindness, more simply than just the words or just a smile. I think I like giggle a lot. That's going to be my word for the day is giggle.
Giggle through the end of the year.
Right.
Any final thoughts as we look towards the end of 2021 and the holiday season?
My hope for people is that they find they're grateful. If they didn't get it at Thanksgiving, there's still time. It's every day is a day to be grateful. And if you can't find the gratitude, find a lesson you can learn or something you can share with someone. And that's a great part of the season as well, is sharing. As much as a greeting card line as it sounds and may have been at one time, sharing really is caring. So that would be my hope for the holiday season.
Willie, thank you so much for joining us as always with your insight, and hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
You've been listening to HPC's Let's Wrap, a podcast by HPC Specialty Infusion for patients and providers. We're proud to specialize in patient health and happiness at hpcspecialtypharmacy.com or call 1-800-757-9192.